Broadcasting live from Geode's Stoic Wisdom, this is Pop Culture Reference, your one-stop reference for all things pop culture. I'm one of your hosts, Garrett Strother.
And I'm your other host, Seamus Connolly. And today we have a special guest on the show, returning once again, the prodigal son returns. Rocky Karri is here today to talk The High Republic Book 3 with us, and we could not be more excited. How you doing, Rocky?
Woo! I am doing good. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about The High Republic. I think this is some of the best Star Wars content in the Disney era. Just really excited to talk about it.
If I'm not mistaken, Seamus, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Rocky is the first guest that we've had back on the show. He's our first returning guest.
Oh my goodness, is he?
No way, really?
You're part of the Two Timers Club? You're gonna get a jacket like SNL? Oh my god, I can't believe it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I'm really honored to be on your guys' show second time.
You're officially in the Hall of Fame at this point until we get one other repeat guest, and then maybe you'll get bumped. Who knows?
Well, Rocky, you're welcome back anytime if you ever need to defend your title.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
But we're going to go ahead and jump into some news real quick. Up top, near and dear to the podcast's heart is, at age 87, Jules Bass of Rankin and Bass, creator of beloved holiday cartoon stop-motion shorts from the 1970s and 80s, has passed away. We did an entire episode several years ago on the Rankin and Bass cinematic universe, which is mostly focused around their Christmas content and also a little bit of July sprinkled in there.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Rock, do you have any familiarity with the Rankin and Bass films?
No, I don't. My family is Hindu, and so we would still celebrate Christmas in terms of, like, giving gifts, but, like, we never really, like, did any, like, religious stuff, and, like, I know this isn't, like, a religious thing, but, well, actually, are the animations more religious, or is it just, like, Christmas?
There's a couple of them that like, lean a little bit. There's Little Drummer Boy, which is obviously more explicitly Christian, but I mean, most of them are more secular in that it's just kind of like Santa Claus and Rudolph, and I mean, there's also the Peter Cottontail Easter ones, which also get a little Jesus-y.
The Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is one of them.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I don't know why this is, but so many Indian households, I know, like my friends, have watched live-action Christmas stuff, but never animated. I don't know why.
That is fascinating.
Yeah,
it's
really
super weird. Like, no Indian person I know has seen, like, the Rudolph thing, like, all the way through. But, like, if you ask them if you've seen, like, Elf, they're like, oh, hell yeah, I've seen Elf. Like, so, like, it's really weird.
That is weird, considering, again, those Rankin and Bass ones are so far removed. They're on the same, like, religious level as an Elf, I feel like.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Especially, I mean, Elf is so influenced by them, the look and feel of the North Pole.
Oh, yeah,
it's so much claymation, a straight reference to these, more or less.
Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but definitely had an undeniable impact on my perception of Christmas as a child, and I think, Seamus, you share that a little bit.
I think at least on the same level, maybe a little less, but I feel like there is barely any holiday memories that I have without some Rankin and Bass going on at some point in the holiday season. But now I think it's time we dive deep on a little bit of Marvel content here on the show, which we are always doing for some reason.
I wonder why. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, right. It's like we're trapped in this corporate franchise loop. Who knows? We got a glimpse at the new Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania trailer that just dropped this week. What did you guys think of that one?
Me and my brother absolutely love the Marvel movies. Like many others, watched towards the end of Phase 1, we got into it, and then Phase 2 and 3, watched it religiously. And Phase 4, we were keeping up with everything, but it was only like the start of this year that we started to feel like really big fatigue, as a lot of other fans have felt. Mainly with the amount of TV shows there are, plus the quality of the movies. Like, besides Spider-Man, everything in Phase 4 has, like, really not hit as high of a mark as I wanted. I do think Black Panther is going to change that. I think Black Panther 2 is going to be sick. But similar to Spider-Man, I feel like both of those movies really don't have a big impact on the MCU in terms of, like, where it's going. Which the movies don't, the best movies don't have to have that, but it sucks that we have very little direction right now. Obviously, we kind of know where it's going with Kang, but still we're kind of left in the dark with that. But I will say, this trailer for Quantumania got me so excited. I think that this is going to be lit. I think Jonathan Majors is Kang. He's going to kill it. I think it was awesome that we got to see him in Loki first. And then this, like, I'm reading, like, reports about, like, how, like, serious he is about the role. Like, I think he's going to be the highlight of Phase 4. So I'm very excited for him especially. And Ant-Man's a great character. So I think him leading the charge is going to be great.
I'm very interested in Jonathan Majors' rendition of Kang. I did like his interpretation on Loki, and I think he's a good actor in general. I feel like we talk about him pretty frequently on this show, both in and out of Marvel. I will say that, funnily enough, Rocky, you brought up the whole kind of isolationism of specific movies that don't impact the larger MCU, and that's something that I've always really enjoyed about the Ant-Man movies, is that they're really contained into being these just kind of wacky comedies. I think they're the MCU films that are maybe not the best, but I think they're really good at embracing their unique tone and embracing just being quippy comedies in a way that most of the other movies don't. And so I think it's really weird to see them being like, you know who's going to be the big vehicle for the main new Thanos villain for Phase 4 is Ant-Man 3, when the first two Ant-Man villains are genuinely nothing. I'm excited for Ant-Man 3, I'm excited for Kang, but I don't know, even though I thought the trailer was very well put together, I'm not super sold on them mixing like this.
That's a really good point.
I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying here, and I have a bigger soft spot for the Ant-Man movies than I guess you do. I've always really liked them, and I'm really excited to see a lot more Cassie Lang in this one. It seems like she is going to be a way bigger part of a lot of this movie specifically. So I'm really excited to see where that goes in terms of like Young Avengers things, or maybe her gaining her own powers. But I can't echo the sentiments of you both about being excited for Kang enough, especially in this trailer. We get a quick glance at his like prime Kang suit a little bit, which has got me super jazzed about what's going on there, and however many Kang variants end up coming in here to cause the chaos that's going to go down in the quantum realm. I'm very, very excited for it. Also, Bill Murray is here for some reason. That's strange, right?
Really great timing on that one, guys. You couldn't have edited the trailer before you dropped this one.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? My
God. Just one quick frame. That was so funny.
That'll be interesting. I think they're going to kill him off so quick in this movie.
Yeah, I'm shocked that they didn't like cut him. Like maybe it's like in the story like you can't cut him, but I'm shocked that they didn't just like cut their losses with that. I especially with a company like Disney, but I don't know, we'll see.
Speaking of Ant-Man 3 casting, we have William Jackson Harper joining the cast in an unspecified role, and I'm thinking, Seamus, that my podcasting call for Reed Richards is about to come to fruition.
I honestly very much think you're right on that. William Jackson Harper, a favorite on this show, of course, Chidi Aragonye from The Good Place. He is fantastic. You know, I've seen him in a couple other things where he doesn't really shed that like super high geeky factor as much, really, but I think if he is in fact going to be a Reed Richards, I think that's like perfect for him.
I don't know, guys. I don't know if I can see it. I've only seen him in Midsommar, so, like, that's all I got. But yeah, I mean, if he is cast as him, like, I hope he does a good job.
You know, I even think his role in Midsommar is a perfect a way to kind of view that still very stressed all the time. Not as, like, Chidi Aragonye from The Good Place, but, like, his intelligence and the way he speaks and the way he kind of carries himself in that way where it's, like, an authority with more knowledge than like brute power of anything, really. I think that could slip into a Reed Richards character. But again, this is just speculation. We only know that he's going to be in the movie and not who he actually is.
For sure.
Rocky, I do think you should watch Good Place if you have any interest. We are huge fans of that on the show. We used to cover it week to week before it ended, and I think it's one of the best sitcoms of the last 20 years.
Dang, dude, a lot of people have recommended it to me. Like, one of my best friends, Ram, he's been telling me to watch it for a while. So, yeah, I'll definitely add it to my list and get to it eventually, yes. I promise.
Ram's got good taste.
I was going to say, Ram is on the money here. It's only 4 seasons of a show, so, like, it's not even that big of a commitment for, like you were saying, Garrett, one of the best comedies on television in the last, like, decade.
But we do have one more piece of news, and Rocky, We know we're dropping this in on you on really, really suddenly, but here on this show, we do like to have a little segment that we call Warner Warning.
Oh, there it is! The alarm! Sound the alarm! This is definitely something we should have explained before we started.
Oh, I'm excited.
Let's get that alarm turned off so we can talk about the latest in our Warner Brothers Discovery merger news. That's something that we've been keeping very much abreast of, Rocky. I don't know how much you've been following it in the news.
Kind of passively, but it's pretty nuts.
Last week we talked about how Walter Hamada, former head of DC Films, and one of the people that was pretty much singled out by Ray Fisher when talking about the problematic and abusive nature of DC Films' infrastructure. So he's left following the Warner Brothers Discovery merger, and in his place, producer Peter Safran and writer-director James Gunn are set to become co-CEOs of DC Films. This is a pretty major move. It's really rare to see a type of creative force, especially one as well known as somebody like James Gunn, become an executive for such a large studio.
Pretty wild when I heard this news, for sure. I'm not unhappy with that news. I feel like James Gunn's creative mind is very on track with just pure entertaining movies. We've seen him take his dip into DC as a director with the Suicide Squad, which I know me and you, Garrett, both really, really liked.
I also really liked it. It was really good.
Great, yeah. See, so like he has his footing in DC right now to make it fun again, maybe, which is maybe a crazy thing to say about DC superhero movies. But also I took a little look at Peter Safran too. A lot of great, fun James Gunn projects that he was a big hand in producing too, so I feel like we're kind of leaning into the entertainment factor of these superhero movies more than we've seen since like the Man of Steel or whatever, the start of all of this very dreary Snyderverse stuff.
Not to mention Peter Safran's long-standing relationship with James Wan, a director that I know you and I are both very fond of, Seamus. I will say on a larger scale, I really like the idea that these creatives are becoming the heads of DC, because so much of Warner Brothers Discovery's recent choices have been very distinctly anti-artist, anti-art, and it seems to me that people like Peter Safran and James Gunn understand the value of artistic voice and artistic license and will champion and fight for and advocate for there being more originality, or at the very least more artistic license within this movie-making machine.
One can only really hope on that. Rocky, are you steeped in DC right now? Did you see Black Adam? Do you care at all about where that's going?
So I did not see Black Adam, but I will say that earlier this year, Garrett, I don't think we talked about this, but me and my old roommate watched the original Justice League. It was booty. And then after that, the day after that, we watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. I swear to God, me and him were like levitating after that movie. We were like, this was incredible. Like, it was just so awesome getting to see a great DC movie, and like for Zack Snyder to really hone in on the vision that he wanted. It was incredible. And afterwards, me and Shaw, we were like Googling like about Zack Snyder and the Snyderverse and like what's going on, and like this year 2022 has gone by with Amber Heard and Ezra Miller, and with Zack Snyder too, and with Henry Cavill obviously before. It's so weird, and like I loved the ending of Zack Snyder's Justice League, and like if they ever made a sequel to it, I will be there day one. But right now it just doesn't look bright. I'm very excited for Shazam 2. I loved Shazam 1. I do eventually want to see Black Adam, but I'm not interested enough to go see it in the theater. Basically, I'm just more picky and choosy with DC than I am with Marvel. Like, the Marvel movies, I'm going to watch all of them, but with DC, where it's like, if I'm interested, I'll see it, but like, I'm not like a completionist.
Ironically, Seamus and I were discussing this on the bus to go see Black Adam. Inadvertently, he and I have become more DC completionists than Marvel of late, I think because DC projects, and I think it's kind of the same reasoning that you have for not being a completionist, is that they're so varied, and they're so tonally different, and they don't seem to care about continuity anymore. And so basically Seamus and I have been seeing the ones that interest us, and that's what we're doing for Marvel too. It just so happens that the last year DC's been hitting that more for us. We weren't admittedly very interested in Black Adam, and it was more of a joke.
It was for the meme.
Yeah.
At first.
But then we saw Black Adam, and we were actually quite taken with it, not as a good movie, but as an experience.
As a fun movie.
Oh, yes, very much so.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately, I'm excited to see where this goes. I think probably, I don't want to speak too soon. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but I think hopefully that this new direction will bring you back to being a DC completionist, Rocky.
Yeah, I hope so, because I love the DC characters, so I hope that, we'll see.
From one mega corporation back to another, I think it is time for us to jump into our main segment where we will be talking about the High Republic Fallen Star, the newest, well, not the newest now anymore, but what was the newest adult mainline novel in the Star Wars High Republic series.
Let's do it.
This week's main segment, we are talking about Book 3, the final installment of the first phase of Star Wars The High Republic, The Fallen Star. Guys, what did you think about this one? Pre-spoilers, what were your overall thoughts about this final piece in Phase 1?
So out of the 3 books, so the first one is Light of the Jedi, second Rising Storm, third Fallen Star, I would put Rising Storm number 1, Light of the Jedi number 2, and then number 3 this. But I still really loved this book. Even though it was my least favorite of the 3, it was still awesome, and I really, really loved it. I loved the looming danger of it all and the disaster movie feel of it. The villains of the book are also excellent. Marchion Ro, or Marchion Ro, I don't know how you pronounce it, but
we don't either.
Ro, Marchion Ro was freaking every time, every scene, he's super badass. I love the mystery with him and his family, which we won't get into right now, but I think the best part about the High Republic is the heroes. I think I absolutely love Stellan Gios and Elzar Mann and Bel Zettifar. Those are the 3 that easily steal the show.
Oh yeah.
I wish that Avar Kriss had more to do in this book, but apparently she's more in a comic or another book, but ain't nobody got time for that. So I wish that I wish that she had more to do in this. But yeah, overall, really loved the book. Great end to this first phase. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but it does end on a cliffhanger, and I kind of wish that it ended on more finality instead of a crazy cliffhanger, because we'll talk about Phase 2 later, but I kind of wish that it ended on more of a conclusive factor. But I don't know. What did you guys think about the book?
You know, Rocky, I agree with most of your sentiments. This is definitely my least favorite of the 3 adult books from the High Republic Phase 1. I still really liked it. I like these characters so much. Zettifar Bell is my boy. He is so well written. He's so likable. To me,
Yes.
He is the default protagonist of this adult mainline series so far, especially because, like you were mentioning, he's the only main character that really has prominence in all 3 books,
Yes.
which is my big problem with the High Republic Phase 1 overall. I jumped around, I think, more than most people are going to be willing to jump around between the different kinds of media, between the comics and the miniature comic runs, and the one-shots, and the adult books, and the YA books, and the kids' books, and everything. And it was still hard for me to keep track of the overall stories of a lot of the characters, especially people like Avar, who seem like they're going to be the main characters when you first start that first adult book, Light of the Jedi. I did like, Zettifar Bell, Briaga, Elzar Mann, and actually Joss and Pika Adrin, who I was not expecting to be so prominently featured in this book, are the characters that I do feel like ultimately do get to kind of follow their way through and be the main characters that they're implied to be when they first start this whole journey. But I think part of the reason that this feels like it has such a lack of finality is because it isn't tying up a lot of the characters that we've come to know over the first 2 books. It isn't finishing off their arcs, or at least setting them up to go on to whatever might lie ahead for the rest of the High Republic phases. While overall I liked it, yeah, that is the thing that really kneecaps my enjoyment of this story as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know what you guys are talking about here. There was a few things that are burning in my brain right now that they did not get the kind of attention that I wanted them to get. And that's not to say that the things that did receive a lot more fleshing out in this book weren't done incredibly well. Like you were saying, Joss and Pika and their relationship with my new favorite characters of all time, Affie Hollow, Leox, and Geode are like my favorite people. And I think their parts of this book were incredibly well done. But things like Avar and even the extent of where Stellan gets to do more things in this book, it's a lot more centralized in the few spaces that he gets to kind of flourish.
I got stuff to say about Stellan, but sorry.
I cannot wait for that, man. I've got a lot to say specifically about these characters that I have grown to genuinely love in the short period of time that I've been, putting myself into the High Republic era. But overall, I think I agree with you guys that while this might not be my favorite of the three, and in fact might be the bottom of the three, I still thought overall it was a really fun read, and a lot of the countdown to chaos that was written in there, but lesser so specifically stated, it reminded me a lot of the more specific countdown of what we got in Light of the Jedi with the Hetzel incident and all that. So I really appreciated that tensity in the writing that really was throughout the entire book until like the last 24 pages. We are a little more wrapped up in the immediate crisis.
Yeah.
But again, Rocky, your thoughts on you wishing it ended with a little more steady footing for what the future of these characters and this specific part of the High Republic era is, I wish was a little more solid.
Yes.
I feel like this is a very effective sequel to The Rising Storm, but it's not an effective end cap to this initial trilogy.
Yes, I would completely agree with that. Light of the Jedi feels more like an intro to like the whole thing, basically. You know what I mean?
Which, to be fair, is its entire function in the franchise, but I really do hope that moving into Phase 2, they've learned from this and are going to go, okay, let's try to keep the young adult characters a little bit more in the young adult books, and the mainline characters a little bit more in the mainline books. Because the thing you were alluding to is, and I've read all the comics now, except for High Republic Adventures, I just can't get into them, and I'm sorry to whoever writes those, because I'm sure they're great, but Avar jumps ship from the books and goes over to the comics, and it's just like, oh, she's gone now, I guess, from these books.
I know, she was awesome in the first book.
Oh yeah, I love the character of Avar, Chris, and
yeah,
the fact that I'm gonna have to kind of inject that character into all the periphery stuff in my own viewing of things, it seems a little daunting, but it's not to say that I wouldn't steep myself deeper into that other periphery stuff. I just wish, I feel like they even tease her a lot more in the beginning of this book itself that doesn't really come through, where
it's in the comics, it's all in the comics.
I guess. I'll read the comics. I enjoyed that first comic collection that I got my hands on from you, Garrett, but I would have liked it in the book, I guess, is the ultimate what I'm saying here.
I'm trying to think really of what we can even, I feel like there's so much that happens so quickly in this book, it's kind of hard to avoid spoiling anything. I'm kind of wondering if we just want to go ahead and start spoilers?
I think so. Like you said,
I'm ready.
Yeah, seriously, this jumps around so much. We need to start jumping ourselves.
Well, there you have it. It is official spoiler warning for Fallen Star, and retroactively pretty much all of the High Republic Phase 1. There's some comic stuff that I'm not going to get into for your guys' sake, but I want to start us off in our spoiler territory by saying Zettifar Bell and Briaga are absolutely the power duo that I did not know I needed until this book, and I'm so invested in them.
Yeah, they are
no
true
doubt,
bros,
dude.
and it's awesome.
I love the Jedi friendships in this High Republic era right now, and their friendship specifically is like truly pure. And maybe that's because Briaga is just the purest boy ever written about, but oh, he's so good. I love him to death. And maybe that's a weird way to phrase that, but
I love how much they relate to each other in terms of like loss. Like after Loden Greatstorm, which rip Loden Greatstorm, he was awesome.
He was a real one.
Yeah, he was a real one. And like I loved Bell and Buryaga's relationship after. And wait, correct me if I'm wrong. So at the very end, Buryaga is presumably dead, but Bell's like, I don't believe he's dead, right?
I finished this book not 24 hours ago, so I got you on the details.
Oh, nice.
It was the mission with Elzar and Bryaga and the ships that are going to defend them in the airlock escape in the cargo bay.
Buryaga is fighting off Rathtars and gives himself the noble sacrifice for Elzar to have the time to open up the shield doors on his own, and presumably Buryaga either gets killed by Rathtars or sucked out of the airlock, but we really just don't know what happens to him following that, and that is a super compelling way for me. I know that you guys didn't like the cliffhanger so much, but they did such a good job establishing Bell and Buryaga as a team, and such a good job at showing Bell's arc over these 3 books about learning to trust his instincts and learning to not give up on his friends, that they have me so invested in that character specifically, in that dynamic specifically, that I am pumped and I need him to go find him right now.
Yeah, if that was a standalone novel, I'd already be reading it, you know? I think the one bit of hope, because I don't believe Buryaga is gone, personally.
I don't
just
believe
like
that they
Bell.
would have given us the hope if he were.
Exactly.
Solely for the fact that he does get into an atmosphere suit before they start the fight with the Rathdars. So I don't know. It's anything is possible. It's also possible that he gets as suddenly axed from this era as any other character in this book, because my God, there are a lot of surprising deaths here.
It's pretty crazy.
Do we want to touch on some of the death count of some characters that I thought were going to be long standing in this era? I mean,
I would love to, with the one that I was so mad about, and that's Stellan Gios.
That honestly floored me. Not at all what I thought was going to go down with that. I mean, at a certain point, reading about him keeping the station afloat, I realized what was going to go down, but entirely shocking to me that that's how they would write part of the ending to this phase.
So I love trios in stories, and I loved how they were setting up that Avar, Elzar, and Stellan all grew up together, were Padawans together, and all like loved each other.
Yeah, the constellation is what they keep calling it.
Yeah, yes! Oh my God, yeah.
So that was so touching to me, and
and reading Light of the Jedi and Rising Storm, I was so hyped. I was like, bro, 3rd book, they're all gonna reunite, and it's gonna be so epic. And Stellan dies. And I was like, what? Maybe it's just because I wanted to see the 3 of them together so badly, but like, I just felt it was kind of just a cheap way to feel sad at the end. Because I feel like Stellan was a good character, and like I remember reading like one of the High Republic writers was like, yeah, we decided to kill him off because like we didn't have anything else for him to do in like phase 2.
What?
And I'm like, what? Yeah, and I'm like, what? There's so much you could do with him. So that was really disappointing for me that they just killed him off so quickly. But what about you guys? What did you think of that?
I think sorry.
No one's ever really gone, guys.
That is true.
Palpatine survived worse, am I right? I mean, he could be at the bottom of the ocean somewhere.
He survived the same thing, essentially?
Yeah, a space station crashing in half into an ocean. I mean, I would fully stop caring about the High Republic if they did that, but it's not off the table.
I think the fixation, Rocky, that you bring up on trios is a really apt kind of avenue to explore the death of Stellan with, because if you look at something like The Force Awakens in the Star Wars canon, where we have the trio, Luke, Leia, and Han, and it seems like the build-up is going to be to getting those 3 characters together and getting them to go on an adventure again, and that's what the fans want, that's what the movie wants you to want, and everything, and then they end up killing Han Solo in what I feel is a very derivative and kind of hollow way to get rid of that character, even if it is deepened a little bit by what they later go on to do with Kylo Ren. I think if you look at that compared to the way Stellan's death is handled, there's a lot more thematically going on, because they center those first 2 books all around building up that trio and building up their relationships and how important they are to each other, and the kind of weird one-sidedness of, like, Stellan is kind of removed from them because obviously Avar and Elzar are in love, even if they can't admit it because they're in the Order.
Yeah.
And they really, like you said, get us hyped up to see them in action together as fully fledged adults. And something that they allude to in The Rising Storm and this book, but they don't really flesh out, is in the comics, Stellan and Avar are really mad at each other because Avar has made an alliance with the Hutts in order to fight the Drengir, which Stellan thinks is a terrible misstep in the overall perspective of the Republic. And so I feel like a lot of that is missing from this book and might be kind of key context when you take into account the idea that Stellan dying is, to me, an intentionally blunt, intentionally unsatisfying way for him to go, because you don't get the reconciliation with Avar, you don't get the moment of the three of them coming together to save the galaxy or whatever else you think you're going to get with them. Kind of like Luke dying in Last Jedi moment, which, despite the fact that you don't get the badass thing that you want, and you don't get the resolution with the other characters that you were really hoping they would have, there is ultimate fulfillment in sacrificing yourself for those you care about, sacrificing yourself for the lives of innocent people, and a serenity in the knowledge that through the Force, the three of them will be together, even if Stellan has physically passed on from the living realm. I agree that I think that should have been more in this stupid book, because that stuff that's going on in the background of the comics is so vital to understanding Stellan's headspace, especially his relationship with Avar. I don't think that I can fault anybody for not liking that death when the full context for it isn't in the book that he actually dies in.
Yeah, because especially there's that moment between Avar and Stellan where they're having a hollow chat, which he's getting closer to arriving at the station, and I took a lot of the disdain and the anger, the frustration from Stellan and Avar, well, I guess more on Stellan's side, with just like the subplot of the invisible levelers that are lurking in the station. And I know a lot of it was it's almost specifically stated by the book, but I think that greater context would have made that moment hit a lot harder, and I'm a little sad that I didn't have that going in.
Yeah, I agree with that, and also, Garrett, what you said was very, very well said. I definitely agree with what you're saying, but I think for me, as somebody who only is reading the adult books, even you're saying that you wish that there was more, they gave more context in this book, and like, for someone like me, like, it's definitely gonna feel that lackingness, for lack of a better term. But yeah, and I think that's a problem that some of the High Republic has, where Book 2, The Rising Storm, felt very grounded, because like it's all that one event, while this, it is the one event, but there's stuff going on behind the scenes that is covered in other stuff.
Totally. I totally get that.
Oh, I will say, I know this isn't a podcast about The Rising Storm, but I want to mention this because I didn't get to talk about this. For The Rising Storm, when Lena So, the Chancellor, she wakes up, like she's waking up after like all the chaos and like after her like wounds from the whole attack, and she wakes up and her son is at her bed, and he like puts a hand on her and they hold hands. Bruh. That really
hit you.
Oh my god, that was like that's probably like my favorite moment in all of the High Republic, because like he was so worried about his mom, and like the fact that like it was such a sad event, but the fact that they were both okay in the end, so good. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
And that makes me further sad that not only do we get such little amount of Avar in this third book, we get very little of the Chancellor in this third book, a character which I love, and I was so happy to see her interact with the Jedi and the Order and the people of the Republic, and we really only get like 2 cutaways to her in her office on Coruscant, and I would have loved a lot more. And again, this is such an isolated event in this book, and the whole point is that they're isolated, but damn, I really like Chancellor So, and I was hoping for more.
Agree. And I think that there are other characters that are featured in this book that die that despite me being really invested in them from previous books, I don't feel like get a lot to do in this one, and had me struggling to remember who they were. And part of that's just weird Star Wars Jedi naming stuff.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
I felt like we didn't get enough reintroduction context on specifically Briaga's master, Nib, and also the one who helps Elzar out with his force problem.
Orla,
right.
the Wayseeker. She was such a cool character.
Wasn't she like a...
Yeah, she was one of the main characters in Into the Dark, actually. That's the first 3 chapters of that book, which is all I read, is how I knew her. A lot of her stuff in here has got me really wanting to go back and read Into the Dark, but yeah, I wish she got more to do in this too. The deaths, the specific deaths like hers, the pairings of characters, and my want to see them interact with each other more, or to a more intimate extent, a lot of that was cut short, and a lot of that was with Orla, because she is such a personal, individual kind of Jedi character that her stuff with Stellan and her stuff with Elzar were both so specifically radical in ways that I didn't think we were going to get cut short on so soon.
Who was the name of the character that has the purple lightsaber in the second book?
Right, she was like completely missing from this book, wasn't she?
Yeah, and she was like, I loved her character. She was really cool, and like she's nowhere in the third. It's like
that I would like to see more of her eventually. I know we've got a whole phase of content before, like hundreds of years before this character is born, but
Ty Yorick.
Yes,
Ty.
That's right. Yes.
She's in the monster from Temple Peak High Republic Adventures comics, which are like the only of the High Republic Adventures I read, but those are before Rising Storm. And then apparently she's only in that and Race to Crash Point Tower, which is the one that takes place concurrently with Rising Storm, and I know she's only in it for a little bit because I know how those 2 stories cross over, even though I haven't read all of Crash Point Tower. So that makes me think that probably they're saving her to come back in another capacity whenever we decide to revisit this part of the timeline. They do such a good job developing that character to not do anything with her, or even mention her, I don't think, in this book.
Not a once. I think that she's completely gone from this. I would maybe like to see her aid Bell in his search for Briaga eventually. Cool. I feel like they might have an interesting dynamic between... Be cool. Yeah, one super intensely emotionally distressed Order Jedi and one just like rogue kid who's trying to do good for the world, maybe. I don't know. I feel like that might be an interesting way to do that, but...
I will say, honestly, that kind of feels like the Jedi equivalent of the relationship between Chansey and Nan in this book.
Oh, interesting. Like two more characters, which we haven't even talked about yet, which I actually really liked.
These Nihil prisoners on the ship that...
Oh, yeah.
Ex-Nihil, maybe?
Yeah, kind of, because Nan doesn't seem fully un-Nihiled yet. She's, like, still a believer, but Chansey's done. She doesn't buy Marchion Ro's whole situation, and she's just trying to fend for herself, and ultimately gets killed doing the one selfless thing that she's done in this entire series.
Man, that was such an intensely dark moment that I did not expect either. I in my own head, I was playing out how the confrontation between Elzar and Nan and Chansey would go down when he finally got to the bottom of the station, but man, did I not expect him to just fully lop her in half, Darth Maul style.
So, Seamus, I read the book when it came out in February, or January, I think it was. So, it's been a while, so this is all coming back to me, but that was insane.
Just to remind you, bad. Rocky, Elzar is a full murderer now, so that's a thing that you have to wrestle with.
And I love that he's like, I love the parallels to Anakin Skywalker with him. I think it's really cool, and I think his character is definitely gonna be one of the highlights of the next books in the timeline, I should say.
I mean, I don't know how he is going to be able to live with himself after inadvertently, but still pretty directly causing Stellan's death, because if he had not killed Chansey, she would have been able to fix the thing earlier, and then Stellan wouldn't have had to stay on the ship and die.
Honestly, That's feel like Elzar is teetering on the edge of dark side stuff right now. I know that's kind of been him wrestling with that for the last 2 books, more or less, but the way that this book fully wraps up, well, there's a lot of really heartfelt stuff with, like, Affy and Leox surviving the fall with an old school parachute, which was absolutely amazing because I was weeping for the man. But Elzar doesn't have to face much of what he's done at all. I thought...
I think it's going to be more of an internal thing. Like externally, it's not going to be like he's on trial or anything, but like internally, he's going to be like, what have I done?
And I assume that is going to push him to the dark side a little bit more, but I feel like he should have had more outward stuff. The wrap up of like all the Jedi coming together and like doing the water pump for the planet, and I just felt like it ended a little too peacefully for Elzar after everything that happened in this book. And that's kind of the problem that I have with even like one chapter apart between him killing Chansey and then getting off the station, and like I know he's wrestling internally with everything that happened, but I feel like he just kind of got off the hook a little more than he should have in the end of everything.
Yes.
I kind of expected him to like go off on his own and like exile himself quietly and not have to face Avar, or, you know, like hurt himself by not getting to reunite with Avar in penance for the murder that he committed. But I'm sure we'll get more of that in Phase 3, I suppose. But I was just expecting a little more consequence immediately for him personally.
I agree with that. There was also the Jedi moving with the water thing at the end.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That just reminded me. Favorite moment of the first book is when Avar does the freaking, like, she meditates and she, like, connects all their minds, all the Jedi's minds, and then they push the freaking thing away from the planet.
Yeah, the Bacta tank explosion that they avoid. Yeah, dude,
that was awesome. That's
definitely the vibes I was getting at the end with that water pump, too.
My favorite moment of this book, I have to think about that.
I have a theory that Elzar and Avar's constant and flagrant disregarding of Jedi practice, of their struggling with the ability to stay on the true and noble path. Avar, obviously, that's a little bit more in the comics. Elzar has been more of a focus in the mainline books here, especially now that Stellan is gone and is not going to be there to keep them in line anymore. I actually think that the Council's reckoning with their ill behavior is going to be the thing that drives the Jedi into these kind of zealous monks that we meet when the prequel era first begins, saying, if we don't crack down and make sure that everybody's staying in line and that everybody is following exactly the code of the Jedi, things aren't going to work out so well, because look what happened to Starlight Beacon, you know. And so I think that's going to be really the slip that we see into this kind of fascist tendency of the Jedi when we first meet them in the prequel era, which up until this point is really the first inkling we get of what they're like early on.
You know, I was actually kind of thinking a similar thing about like the slow steer towards what we know in the prequels as the Jedi Order, and the effect that the loss of Starlight Beacon is going to have on that. Like the idea of openness and trusting, taking things in a way that are way more light and less diligent than what we would know in the Jedi Order of the prequels. And even that might push Elzar away a little bit more, or I have been thinking that Elzar may turn into a Wayseeker himself.
And actually in the comics, not to spoil too much for you guys, because I do encourage you to read them because they are pretty good. After Starlight Beacon, they talk about pulling all of the Jedi from all of the temples because they're so worried about the levelers, right? Because they're like, there is a thing out there that's targeting Jedi and we can't keep them safe. We need to get them back to the temple on Coruscant.
And there's our big list of abandoned Jedi temples that we always find ourselves in the newer stuff that's way past the High Republic era.
Yeah.
Rocky, I'm very curious to know, have you landed on a favorite moment from this book?
Yes, I think my favorite moment, and this might be a lame pick, but I think this is the one that really resonated with me because I said I wish I saw the trio together. I loved when Elzar and Avar are finally together at the end, and they are just like thinking about Stellan as they see like the destroyed beacon. That was pretty cool. I honestly didn't really like the message that Marchion Ro gives at the end. I kind of wish that the book ended with them looking at the ruins.
I can see that for sure. That's a great moment.
But yeah,
that's a really sweet moment that really, again, digs into the emotional core of that Constellation trio.
Exactly. But what about you guys?
Well, mine's a lot stupider than that, but when honest to God, I had to like put my book down when Geode killed that red-haired jerk in the hangar.
Oh my God.
I was floored. I've been just so entertained by the writing of Geode as a character and like the way they write his movements or lack thereof and his reactions or lack thereof to anybody who can't understand him. It's like the evolution of how they write Briaga's dialogue, kind of, where they kind of like, there's never a quote from Briaga. They kind of just explain his meanings and they talk about the pitch of his growls and all that. But to boil it down to an actual rock that does not ever physically move in a way that is like visible, and he does not speak in a way that is, or communicate in a way that's audible, and him literally killing a man to save a small boy was just the funniest and honestly most badass thing I've ever seen or heard a rock do in fiction. So I love that moment, and it really zeroed in on that conflict in the hangar that was super compelling to me between all the human, non-Jedi, non-Force users that were caught up in the situation.
Geode, when he was first announced, or like when he was like in like a comic or something before
his introduction, I believe, was in Into the Dark when they introduced the whole vessel crew.
Okay, I thought it was so stupid. I was like, oh my God, like a rock? Are you kidding me? But I died of laughter every time he moves off screen. Like there's that one scene,
right?
Like there's that one scene where I forget who it was, but like one of the bad guys, they're like doing something, and then he like feels like someone's watching him, and he turns around and Geode's just standing there like that. Like I was like actually laughing out loud. Like,
Geode is like, he's got the Batman method of just like appearing and disappearing when people's backs are turned, and I thought that was great.
So funny.
Also, apparently that Geode is like a sex fiend. He's like trying to bed all these different species. He's a rock. Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, that was also like, what is going on? But like, I think they know they know how ridiculous it is, and they like play it to their strength. So.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. But Garrett, do you have a favorite moment that sticks out to you?
I do, and it's not something we've talked about yet, so it's actually good timing, because I think that we're ready to wrap things up here, is Bel's entire journey with the medical tower is something is really exciting, and at the beginning of the book feels like a distraction, and I'm like, okay, Bell, we gotta get to the action here, like, focus, man, get your head in the game. And they do such a good job of having him work with Briaga, having him work with Stellan and Elzar, and get to know all the other characters, and be so effective in those other places that by the time we get into the third act of this book, and you're like, oh wait, the medical tower, he's gotta get back, like, Ember's over there, his master's over there. So for me specifically, the moment where he is able to disengage the airlocks on the tower and free it from the rest of Starlight Beacon and allow the medical frigate to save them is just so moving. And by that point, there's been so many deaths and so many explosions, and everything seems so lost that the solace of just saving the lives on that part of the tower feels like such a victory. I literally got goosebumps when I read it. Bell is my favorite character in this entire era so far. He feels like such a classic, mythic protagonist while also feeling so normal and human and modern at the same time. I think the writing on him is effortless, and that climactic moment of heroism is so moving, and Stellan's reaction to it is so moving that for me is the high point of this book.
Hell yeah. I completely second that.
Yeah, seriously, I do too. All the medical stuff, all the stuff with Bell is so engaging when he has to split up from people, and I'm always worried if he's going to get dusted like Thanos. It was very great to see him finally get to safety with Ember and Indira, Stokes, and all the people that he's been trying to keep alive so desperately. That was like his one main little Bell mission specifically. It was a triumph when he came up with that plan. Is there anything else that we forgot to mention that is really sticking in anybody's mind? I mean, I thought the whole structure of the disaster itself, like straight up doing a Titanic or a Poseidon where the station is fully bisected, was incredibly interesting and really messed up. The way that Claudia Gray writes the damage inside and outside of the station, and the level of intricacy they have to go through to travel in what should be like the shining light of the Republic, Starlight Beacon. It's their home, basically, and the way they have to dismantle, destroy, crawl through the internals of it throughout the entire book, I thought was an awesome way to write what could have been more boring if they were just kind of running around. The way they wrote the destruction itself was great.
I want to really bring up my boy JJ5145.
Yes,
he
JJ.
is a great droid. That's one thing that I feel like the High Republic has been really missing, is great droid characters.
Yes.
And I understand that's because they're hard to write, even though, as we were just talking about with characters like Buryaga and Geode, being a non-traditionally verbal character, there's still really entertaining and really character-filled ways to write those kinds of beings. So JJ5145, very happy that he's here. Very glad he survived the crash, and he's going to be around to bother Avar and Elzar and everybody else for the rest of the era.
I will be forever devastated by him saying, "I am a gift from Master Stellan to you, Elzar man." I was, oh god, that really took me down.
Oh, one last thing I wanted to say about the whole High Republic stuff. I think that it's a crime that these were not movies. There was a lot that I was reading in it where I was like, damn, I wish that my dad and my brother and some of my other friends who don't read these books could enjoy this. But you could be like, oh, well, just tell them to read the book. And it's like, some people just don't read a lot. And like, seeing it on the big screen would just be so awesome to see. We're probably never going to get a High Republic movie we will, but like not for a long time. So yeah.
Rocky, do you have casting off the top of your head of who you would want for the 3 leads?
Okay, so I have thought about this. For Avar, I would say, what's her face? The actress who played Sylvie in Loki.
Oh, she'd be good. Yeah, I don't know her name, but she's
really good
casting,
though.
yeah.
And then Elzar Mann. Have you guys seen 1917?
Yes.
The main guy from 1917.
He'd be good. He's a little young, probably, but he's definitely got the right look.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and move on, talk a little bit more High Republic over in our pop culture reference for the episode.
This week's pop culture reference is the High Republic Phase 2. Phase 2 of Star Wars The High Republic, also known as The Quest of the Jedi, is the current era of canon Star Wars books and graphic novels taking place 150 years before the initial phase of content. After launching in October 2022 with comics and young adult novels, the first mainline adult novel, Convergence, will debut in late November.
There's no word on how long Phase 2 will last, but it is scheduled to go at least through summer 2023. While the third phase of this new High Republic initiative has yet to be expounded upon by the authors and producers at Disney, it is speculated that this second phase will focus on the solutions of the Starlight-Nihil conflicts and the expanding turmoil across the galaxy. Rocky, I know that you're really only reading those mainline adult novels which haven't come out yet, but are you excited to hop on to Phase 2 going forward?
Oh, yes.
We're actually going to leave Rocky behind just for a minute to go over and talk about this week's Star Noirs, Andor Episode 8, but Rocky will pick right back up with us as we go on to our Save the Rec Center segment. Now it's time for Star Noirs, where we break down the latest episode of the Disney Plus original Star Wars series, Andor. This week we're talking about Episode 8, Narkina 5.
Lots of interesting stuff here, man.
I will say, it's pretty interesting coming off of what you and I both thought were back-to-back some of the greatest hours of Star Wars, period.
Seriously, yeah.
That, even though this one I don't think is nearly as interesting or good, I was really taken with this episode.
Yeah, dude, me too. It kind of slowed everything down a little bit. It kind of sectioned everything off and kept it in its place for an episode right now, which is the last time we got a really interesting setup episode. We got the Aldhani heists right after that, so I'm expecting incredible things off the back of this really cool prison-focused episode here.
I was surprised about how much of it was really, without getting into spoilers, of course, focused on stuff that has essentially no relation to anything that's come previous in this series, which I think is really great in Andor, that we go to these different places that we've never been before, which in Star Wars is not very frequent, to be honest, in newer content at least.
Yeah.
We meet these cultures or complexes or governments that feel so fleshed out and so fully realized, and it feels like the world really was going there before, Andor showed up or whatever, as opposed to Mandalorian. A lot of the time it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of guys that sit around in this cantina and then the Mandalorian shows up and things happen.
Even without focusing too hard on spoiler stuff here, too, I'm going to try to avoid it as best I can. It's a lot of stuff that we were kind of given hints of here and there as we've been going along here. A lot of things with characters that are, like I said, kind of all set up to spring into action here, and I would really like to get into spoilers a little more, because there's a lot of just very minute specifics about a lot of the mechanics behind a lot of the things that are happening right now. I guess I mean that figuratively and literally.
Alright, let's break into spoilers then, because we have lots to say about Luthen and Mon and Karn and stuff that we really can't even broach without calling spoilers, I think.
Yeah, I'm ready. Threshold is broken now. I'm in love with the bleakness of this electro prison that we're finding ourselves a lot in this episode here.
Feels a lot like George Lucas's first film, THX 1138, which I'm assuming is very intentional.
I would imagine so. It's very, very influenced, of course, and it's so crushing the way that they're showing all of this here. And we were kind of getting little hints of it in the last episode, wrapping up towards the end of the consequences of a lot of things that were going down because of Cassian's actions and the Aldani stuff and all of the program that's like doubling everybody's sentences in the galaxy and like cracking down on everything.
I think it's really interesting seeing even already incarcerated people who have nothing to do with the rebellion feeling the consequences of that.
Yeah, seriously, it is brutal inside that place. The electro floor is definitely intimidating, to be sure. And I'm loving back to the Star Wars universe finally. Andy Serkis is here, not Snokified up, which is fun. He gets to be doing stuff this time.
I love seeing him in a non-mocap role. It's always such a treat. Like, oh, you get to use your face this time, Andy. Good.
yeah. Some people think he's, a little overacty when he's not covered in, white dots to map his face. But, like, I think he's great in this episode in general. I'm going to be very interested to see him, I guess, probably oppose whatever prison break or rebellion politics are happening with our friends who are frantically doing sign language to each other in the hallways there. I don't know. I assume he's probably going to be against something like that and try to keep his own order to save the last of his brief part of his sentence here. People are going to be grabbing tools off of the line that they're working on. That weird, like, team-focused, they're building equipment against each other and the loser gets punished is fantastic. I'm sure people are going to be grabbing lasers and wrenches to bash each other in there if somebody finds a way to turn off the electro floors.
I saw somebody point out on Twitter, and this is not something I caught myself, despite how recently I'd seen Rogue One, that one of the guys that's in Cassian's little pod is a rebel in Rogue One.
Oh, I thought one of his guys felt familiar in there, and that's probably, like, is he just like one of the soldiers who's at the Scarif battle?
Yeah, one
I
of
assume?
the, like, 15 guys who go with Jin and Cassian and the rest of Rogue One.
That's kind of awesome. I guess that guy's maybe gonna be part of his escape plan, maybe, or maybe
he's already planned the escape and Cassian's gonna tag along.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe he's already part of some rebellion cell, some kind of resistance that's gonna spark something in the prison. That is maybe gonna be another way that he crosses paths with Luthen, who's out here trying to organize different strikes with different cells of different teams here, which is interesting.
But also, he sent Vel and Cinta to kill Cassian. They're hanging out on, what is it, Ferrix, his home planet?
Yeah,
getting pretty tense over there because not only do we have Aunt Petunia, she's not doing too hot. Bix is trying
really
to take
not.
care of her. The guy that tethered the ship in those first couple episodes, he's there. Now it's time, though, for Luthen's Lair, the part of the show where we talk about new Easter eggs that we've found in Luthen's antique shop.
God. Did you find? I was looking. I didn't clock another one. Did you
I got
find
two
one?
for you. I don't know if
What
they're
do you-
new for this week, but they're new to me for this week.
Oh, what did you see this time?
What looked like Chief Tarful's little head thing from episode 3, the Wookiees. The like
really?
chainmail helmet that he wears.
Yeah, no kidding. I did not clock that.
And it's right next to that sun hat that Padme wears when they're traveling back to Naboo in episode 2.
No kidding. He's got a lot of Naboo stuff in there. What's the deal with that? That's interesting.
Presumably, Naboo being Palpatine's homeworld.
Oh my goodness.
Would be more valuable, and Naboo is such a culturally rich planet. And Luthen not doing a lot this episode, other than like going to see Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, he has a sit down with Saw Gerrera. You know, we get Forrest Whitaker killing it. He's got hair this time. Love it. Love to see it.
Even now, I think it's interesting seeing how when there's no organized rebellion going on at all, he's still like, no, everybody's an idiot but me, and I'm the only one who knows how to really rebel. I was very curious, because I don't know what the timeline is on Jin leaving his party.
Yeah, that is an interesting... I'm trying to think. 5 years... Damn, do they even say when they parted ways, really?
They probably do.
I remember she mentions that she was still really young, because she was like, you just like gave me a blaster and told me good luck, basically,
yeah.
I feel like. So, I don't know.
Pretty bleak that Luthen just cuts off Bix like that. That there's just absolutely no... But I guess it's the rebellion. You gotta do what you gotta do, and if she's been compromised, which we know she has by the end of this episode by the ISB...
Oh, yeah. One insanely small moment that I was just like... It perfectly encapsulates the... just like shadow games of the ISB and the Empire, and specifically Dedra. She tells her lackey to leave the first prisoner guy that where the radio is stashed in his place, and then as soon as Bix comes in, she's like, "What are you doing? Take him away!" Like it's just like all of the games that they're playing, the intimidation games of the ISB as like a tactic is fascinating to see, especially with her. I'm still loving the direction this character is going in, even if she's bullying my boy Cyril in the interrogation room.
The meeting that we've been waiting for, and it was kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, is it crazy that I wanted him to get the upper hand on Andor through the Empire? I'm like rooting for this man for anything. Like I want him to have a win of some kind, and he's just crushed around every corner that he turns.
But again, he's so pathetic, and I think that's the point of the character. He's Sisyphus, you know? He just can't get it together. Although he does technically come out with a win at the end of this because he's helped the Empire, and that's going to reflect well on him.
But like, he doesn't... That's not enough for the man, you know? He needs his justice. And Dedra says to him, like, if you make another false report, it won't be me who you're answering to. I think... maybe that is going to convince him to do that exactly, and like that is going to throw more wrenches into her plans looking for Cassian so that he might be able to, you know, get his hooks further into the Empire as an asset so that he's not just like thrown aside again.
We're getting more fascist with him, though. You can hear him saying things like, can one be too stringent when enforcing order and stuff like that?
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
I don't think rebellion's coming anymore for him. I think that ship has sailed. Yeah, I think his alienation is going to build to some kind of violent outburst that we've not seen from him yet, and I'm very curious who that's going to be directed at.
Maybe his mother?
We didn't even talk about Mon Mothma. That's more of the same, really, from last episode.
Yeah,
She's conspiring with the other guy from her homeworld of Chandrila.
And her husband is getting more suspicious of it, though, I will say. I think we're inching closer to his betrayal and the loss of Mon Mothma's family in her life, and that'll be interesting.
We will move on now to Save the Rec Center. Rocky's going to come back on. Don't worry, he's going to be back for the end of this show, seeing us off. So, excited for Star Wars next week, man.
Yeah, man, I am too. But let's move on. Let's get back to Rocky.
Save the Rec Center!
Now it's time to Save the Rec Center, where we give you our weekly recommendations. Rocky, since you're our guest this week, we're gonna let you take the first at bat here, buddy. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so I think the last time I did this was, I think I did Avatar: The Last Airbender. Was that right?
Yes, that is right. I remember that.
So for this time, I'm gonna do something similar but a little different. Have either of you seen Attack on Titan?
My friend, I absolutely have. I know Garrett has not, because he's not an M&A boy, but...
Okay, Seamus, we gotta talk privately.
Yes, my friend,
days.
yes.
But Garrett, what have you heard of Attack on Titan?
I know there's big giant men that don't seem to have any skin and eat people, and I know the theme song is a banger, and that's what I got for you.
That is 100% accurate, Garrett. Good job.
Yes, all those are super accurate, but Garrett, I think that I can't recommend Attack on Titan enough for anybody. Hajime Isayama is the name of the guy who's the writer, who he wrote the manga for it. And how well thought out the story is and how well planned it is just insane. Like, the anime is not done yet, but where we are in the anime right now, you rewatch some of the first episodes and you can see what he was setting up. And my friends who have read the manga, they said that it just like keeps going further, and like the last chapter connects with the first chapter like brilliantly. Apparently, I've not read it, but I'm planning on watching it when it comes out. But I can't recommend it enough. The characters are super well written. The story and the world is so unique, but also familiar. And it's a very sad story. It's like I'm not gonna recommend it for like happy-go-luckiness, but it is very powerful and it's amazing. Everyone who I've talked to Attack on Titan about it's just a treat talking about it. So yeah, that's gonna be my recommendation.
Yeah, I definitely second that. It's one of the most brutal shows I have ever seen in terms of violence and gore, and my god, and even like to say that about an anime is crazy because they go over the top with everything, but this show is something special. So I agree with you on that, Rock. Garrett, do you want to hit us up next with what you got to Save the Rec Center?
I'd love to, because I don't have something that's particularly for everyone / is hyper-violent as well. Okay. Brand new on HBO Max, straight from theaters, the new film Barbarian. I had heard very good things, but I didn't know anything about it other than a couple of the cast members and a vague poster and maybe a little bit of a tagline hinting at the premise, but I won't get into too many details about the overall trajectory of the film, other than to say that it is definitely not for the faint of heart, and it is not at all what you're going to expect it to be based on either what you know going into the film or what the film sets itself up to be, but it is channeling so many of the camp horror masters. I was genuinely surprised and scared by multiple things that happened in it. The way that people reacted when X came out, a movie I did not get the hype for, that's how I'm feeling about Barbarian. And I don't know if either of you have seen it or know anything about it, but now that it's on HBO and you can watch it in the comfort of your own home and take a little pause when you get a little freaked out, very, very much an enjoyable time.
You should have seen how big I was smiling when you were saying all that, because this doesn't happen often, folks, but it's a double rec center.
No way,
It's a once in a blue moon. It happens. My rec center this week is Zach Kreger's Barbarian, freshly dropped on HBO Max. I loved it, Garrett. I'm so surprised we didn't mention this to each other at all in the last couple days, but I absolutely loved it. It's so freaky. It's so imaginative. Zach Kreger is a comedy genius, and that is 100% a part of this movie. It's one of the funniest horror movies I've seen in a couple years. Like, when they break down to the comedy of it all, it's so funny. Genuinely horrifying in all of the horror that it brings to the table here. 100% not what I thought it was going to be. Like you were saying, Garrett, the twists and turns are staggering. But I absolutely loved it. It's streaming. Throw that bad boy on, and you will not be disappointed at all.
So I have not seen the movie, but 2 people recommended it to me this week, and now you 2 recommended it, so that's 4 total. So I will definitely be watching it maybe tonight or tomorrow. So I'll let you guys know when I watch it.
Yeah, please send us a text.
Seriously,
let us know what
dude.
you're feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Rocky, it's been a pleasure having you on for a second time on Pop Culture Reference. I'm very glad that you made the time for us out of your busy schedule. I know it's great to talk to you and catch up, especially with you living all the way out in Cali now. Do you have anything that you want to plug? I know obviously we've talked about Culture Cantina on here before, but any social media accounts that you want people to follow, anything like that, where can we find you?
Yeah, so me and my brother, we do just anything like that we want to talk about in the world of pop culture, similar to Garrett and Seamus here, but we do it over on YouTube, and we haven't uploaded in a while just because we like to do it together. We don't really like to do it when we're separated, like in different states now. But yeah, Culture Cantina, and then also on Instagram, just you could look up Rocky Karri. That's ROCKY REDDYKARRI. I just realized there's a lot of Y's and I's there. But yeah, follow me on Instagram, and thank you guys so much for having me. This was really awesome, and like, just I love talking to you guys because like it's just, I feel like no matter what nerdy thing we talk about, I feel like we always, and even if we disagree too, we're always like, I get what you're saying, man. Like it's always the best. So
Absolutely. Yeah. You're great to have on, and we hope to have you on again soon.
No, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
If you want to reach the show on social media, you can hit us up at PCR_podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can reach the show directly by emailing popculturereferencepod@gmail.com.
Next week's segment, we're going to be covering God of War 2018 as God of War Ragnarok hits game consoles across the globe. And Seamus, I know you just started your playthrough, so that's going to be pretty fun.
Yes,
Whoa.
Literally yesterday I just started. I'm loving it so far, so I can't wait to get down and get talking with you.
Sorry. Whoa. You guys are doing a God of War video?
Oh yeah, brother. Oh yeah.
Okay, God of War 2018 is easily top 10 video games of all time.
Wow, that's a big statement, Rocky.
I freaking cried playing that game. Oh my god, I love that game to death. I don't know if I can join you guys next week, but I will say that it is incredible. If you've not played it, play it immediately. And God of War Ragnarok, when I boot up that game, I might just start crying. Like I do so, but yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. It's got Rocky's stamp of approval, and not to spoil too much of my thoughts for next week, but Rocky, I 100% agree with you in terms of it being one of the most impressive feats of video gaming I have ever encountered.
So tune in for that next week, folks. It's going to be a real spicy one. It's going to be a lot of grunts and saying, boy. So that'll be great. That'll be great for everyone.
I look forward to talking about that next week.
And as the Jedi always say, for adios and amigos.